how are you, Asaf?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Look, I'm just going to ask you a question here. Asaf, ABB is one of the largest suppliers of EVSE equipment globally. What sort of partnerships are you seeing with ABB and cities that have helped overcome some of the key problems with EV infrastructure, such as charging for apartments and for street parking and grid-side high-power charging enablement?
Sure. Thanks, James, for the question and for the opportunity to be with you and the other panelists. And happy World EV Day. ABB approaches city electrification and digitalization from a wide and interconnected lens, from smart buildings to transportation. And I think that's kind of a useful paradigm because transportation electrification is far from monolithic. In a city, you have a wide landscape, transit bus operators, personal drivers. Some live in apartments, some are in homes, some have dedicated parking, some don't. Of course, you have delivery trucks that may be based outside the city, and then transportation network companies like Uber and Lyft. So each of these segments may have different charging technology needs, and there's really no one-size-fits-all approach. But before getting to your point, I just want to kind of give some scale to the challenge. So a little back of the envelope math here. There are currently about 2 million registered passenger vehicles in New York City, which doesn't include trucks, buses, or any other kind of vehicles. If every one of those cars were electric and plugged in at the same time using a simple level 2 charger, it would create about 13 gigawatts of demand.
That is huge. That is crazy.
Yeah, it's about 13 nuclear power plants.
Wow.
So, of course, in reality, it would happen differently. Every car won't charge at the same time. There might be energy storage or managed charging, but it just gives you a sense of the transformation we're embarking on. And as much as it is massive, it's also going to be distributed. And so that creates some unique challenges. So as I think about transportation electrification in cities, 3 instructive principles come to mind. First is we need to address every segment of the transportation sector. Second, we have to do it collaboratively. And third, our approach must be flexible enough to evolve with the market and the technology. So to your specific question, one of the segments where we're seeing partnership with cities on eMobility is in bus transit. So transit agencies are the first movers in urban transportation. For the past few years, we've been seeing them purchase a few buses here and there and some chargers. But now that they're getting comfortable with the technology, they're beginning to make larger investments. So that means purchasing buses in large numbers and thinking seriously about how they design and implement charging at scale. So these buses have big batteries, and you gather them into a depot. You need a lot of power. And importantly, you need a lot of power in a very small footprint. Real estate in cities is at a premium. So to meet these challenges, we've designed some systems where you can stack all of the power equipment above the buses in order to save some footprint. And we've also begun installing pantograph chargers that come down from the ceiling of the bus barn and charge each bus automatically as it pulls into the depot. And then you don't have to worry about plugging in the vehicle or any of those sorts of challenges. So, there are a host of other things cities can do as well. Converting their own fleets, EV-ready building codes, setting EV targets. And many cities, including some of the ones on the panel today, are already drafting their own transportation electrification plans. And so I think, again, as we kind of engage in this thinking and this vision, we got to keep these 3 principles in mind, which are that every transportation segment matters, and they should all get attention. So that's different types of vehicles, from passenger cars to buses and trucks, and different types of drivers, single-family homeowners to apartment dwellers. And equity in the eMobility vision is really important to success. Of course, you can't work on every segment at the same time, but we don't want to artificially leave out certain stakeholders or participants. We have to collaborate, and we're seeing this across cities, which means bringing multiple stakeholders to the table. Manufacturers of cars, infrastructure providers, utilities, fleet owners, and of course, drivers and riders, because they're the ones that live it every day. And we really need to evolve with the market. So for example, 10 years ago, no one was thinking about 350 kilowatt charging with liquid cooled cables. No one was thinking about 150 kilowatt pantographs coming down from the ceiling and automatically charging a bus. So we really need to be nimble in our approach to electrification, or we'll unintentionally hamper adoption. I have some few examples of that if you like. But cities are dynamic, and they're hotbeds for innovation. So if we really want to innovate and lead, we definitely need to make sure that we address all the market players and participants, that we work together, and that we evolve with the market and with the technology.
Yeah, thanks very much, Asaf. That's really important. We've actually got a couple of questions that have come in. So the first one that we've got in here, we've got Gilbert Castellan. Given the energy power demand in New York City for EVs, would our EV infrastructure require conversion to more nuclear plants? What are your thoughts on that? Or, is this something that's a little bit, on that side of the fence, and, ABB is kind of the bridge in the middle? What are your thoughts?
Sure. ABB is involved in electrification all the way from, the distribution grid all the way to the vehicle. That power demand is theoretical power demand, right? For purposes of conversation, right? Mm-hmm. So obviously we'd like to see the generation portfolio go towards cleaner sources of electricity. The good news for EVs is that we know how to do that. Mm-hmm. Which is why converting to electrification is so important. The majority of new generating capacity, at least in the US, has been renewable with solar and wind. They've been growing drastically. And so the carbon emitting generation facilities have been winding down. So I think the prospect is really good, but we're certainly gonna need a mix of technologies in order to get there.
Yeah, thanks, Asaf. The next question we have from Roger Atkins. There's a lot of new charging technologies that are coming up, and one of the ones that I know Roger's quite interested in is has ABB looked at high power wireless chargers, or there's others that are out there, for instance Robotic. What has ABB been looking at to source those types of things? Are they available in the US? There's other trials going on around the world. What's the latest technology that you're seeing in chargers?
Certainly. So robotics for sure. ABB is one of the largest maker of robots globally. And so for certain applications, we are working on those type of solutions. Wireless charging is promising. I think as we've learned with all sorts of charging technology, everything has a niche. And I think wireless still has a ways to go. There's no standard around it or interoperability for those. But we're really seeing a lot of growth in the portfolio in chargers from level 2 all the way to high power charging. And I think that's where some of the real innovation is happening, is on that side. We're seeing the ability to pack more and more power into a smaller and smaller footprint. And I think that's really important for cities. As again, you need to have a lot of power for these chargers and footprints at a premium. So that's something that we've certainly seen in our technology portfolio as it's grown, is being able to fit more in a smaller footprint.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you, Asaf. The next question is from Tony Shorthouse. How realistic is V2G over charging or other wireless charging? What are your thoughts surrounding V2G?
There's been a lot of work on V2G happening, particularly in California. And I certainly think it's promising. The question that we always ask, and I think it's important to ask, is how's the vehicle going to be used? How's it going to operate? And how's the charger going to be used? And for a lot of folks, V2G may not make sense, but for some use cases, it might. For example, if you're on the go and you're having a fast charge session, you're probably not in a situation where you want to be putting power back to the grid, right? You want to be taking power quickly so you can get on your way. In other cases where you might have idle assets like school buses in the summertime, where they have large battery capacity that aren't being used, that might be a great time where you can have some exchange between the vehicles and the grid. So, there are a lot of nuances to work through, and we haven't even talked about a number of them. However, it's something that we need to have in the arsenal. But I think the important thing is figuring out, what's the actual use case for this, and how will it be used.
Great. Thanks, Asaf. Thank you very much for those comments, and thank you for your thoughts on these questions today. We've got some questions for everyone between each other of the panelists. So Can Asaf talk to us about how, if ABB is working with local utilities, specifically around infrastructure at scale, and how ABB is working to prioritize equity?
Certainly, ABB works very closely with our utility partners. And we provide electrical equipment beyond just the charger, going all the way to the distribution system. And so we work with them as they kind of think through the challenges that they have for bringing electricity and electric vehicle charging to all aspects of the community. I think the area where we see the most impact from an equity perspective these days really is in transit. It's kind of the best way to reach folks that don't have vehicles, that live in some other communities where you have significant local pollution from the transportation sector. You see that really having an impact in the transit space, and utilities are very much engaged with the transit agencies and with the infrastructure providers focusing there. The other area we're actually seeing a lot that I think impacts equity is in the port sector, which is slightly different from the service transit space, but ports are typically very poor quality, low air quality areas, and there's massive opportunity for electrifying ports. ABB has been doing it for decades, but we're also seeing more and more of it happen now for the vehicles that operate in port, moving the cargo out on drayage, and a lot of programs are happening there to electrify those vehicles. And then also actually the ships themselves. So we're electrifying ferries throughout the US and the world, and other forms of transit too. So, I think those areas are kind of where it's starting from the equity perspective, but I do think we actually have a long way to go, particularly addressing multi-unit dwellings and some of the other areas where there is an imbalance.
Yeah, excellent, Asaf. Really appreciate that. Erica has a question for Asaf on high power charging. Erica.
Asaf, so I know you guys are kind of the masters of the future of high power charging, and I'm really curious what ABB sees as the next thing in fast charging, and especially for medium and heavy duty vehicles.
Yeah, thanks, Erica. One of the areas that I think there's a lot of opportunity that we're working on for this space is modularity and scalability. And this goes beyond just the physical charger itself, but it's all the gear that comes with it to make high power charging happen. And so we are developing and deploying more and more modular solutions where you can put the transformers, the switchgear, the distribution controls, everything in a box or on a skid or in a container. And in some cases, you can integrate battery energy storage or whatever other kind of flexible equipment you need in there, and to make it small and modular. Because what we're seeing now is more and more with these trucks, obviously they have high power demand, limited space, and you need ease of installation to keep costs down. And so with these more modular solutions in a smaller footprint, you're able to achieve that, and you're able to really kind of expand the view of what a charger means. It's not just about the charger, but it's about that whole value chain from the charger back to the grid. And if you're able to do it right, you can also obviate the need for other sort of grid investments that the utility might have to make, so that you can, again, make it cheaper to install, faster to install, and really deliver that value to owners and operators.
Thank you, Asaf. That's really much appreciated. Now, one thing, I'm going to put you all on the spot. I want each of you to give like a very brief 1 second, a few words or one sentence summary of what you think the future of the cities is with electric vehicles. And I'm going to start with you, Asaf.
I think the future is bright, and I think the future is going to be diverse, just like the cities are. We're going to see a diverse set of solutions to the diverse set of drivers and the community that's out there. And I think we'll get there if we can find a way to unleash that innovation and those multiple solutions for all the different players out there.